Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Thanks, Ben. Now, the High Court will make a ruling today on whether a former Chief of Staff of the Iraqi Army can bring a private prosecution against Tony Blair over the Iraq War. We speak now to our legal affairs correspondent, Clive Coleman, who's at the High Court. So tell us more about this case. Who's bringing it and what's it about?
Well, he's already tried to bring it. He tried to bring it at Westminster Magistrates Court last year. He was unsuccessful. The court ruled basically that Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister, the former Foreign Secretary Jack Straw and the former Attorney General Lord Goldsmith all had what was known as implied immunity from prosecution because of their former government roles. But the court also ruled that the crime that the General, his name by the way is Abdul Wahid Shanan Ribat, as you say, is a former Chief of Staff of the Iraqi Army, the crime he was trying to have them prosecuted for is the crime of aggression. In other words, waging an aggressive war in breach of the United Nations Charter. But the court back last year ruled that the crime of aggression was not a crime in our domestic English law. These proceedings at the High Court are an appeal against that decision. Now, what was argued on the General's behalf was that the crime of aggression was sort of wrapped into, had been imbibed into our domestic law. And in fact, when the former Nazi leaders were prosecuted at Nuremberg after the Second World War, that was done on the basis that the crime of aggression was part of our UK law. However, critically, there was a ruling in 2006 by the law lords, that the forerunners, if you like, of the Supreme Court, that crime, the crime of aggression, does not apply in UK law. It doesn't form part of UK law, and Parliament would have to pass an Act of Parliament to make it part of UK law. So today we will get a ruling. If the General is successful, then the matter would go back to the Supreme Court, and they would have to consider whether that decision back in 2006, which said the crime of aggression doesn't apply in our law, was correct or not. Many commentators, I think this is a very high bar for the General to pass. It is unlikely that the court will rule in his favour, but we'll find out whether they have done in a matter of minutes from now. So come back on and tell you exactly what happened.
Clive, we will do. Before you go, I just want to ask you the implications of this. Just give us a wider sense of the significance of this kind of action.
Well, I mean, if it is established that the crime of aggression is a crime that can be prosecuted under our law, it means that our political leaders, if they take the country into war and they do so unlawfully and in breach of the United Nations Charter, it means that they can be held responsible and prosecuted in a British court for the crime of aggression. So it is a very, very significant ruling. At the moment, as I say, they have this implied immunity from prosecution, but if the law changes on that, that's a very, very major step, and huge ramifications for those critical and very important vital decisions for the nation, where if the law changed, our political leaders could be held responsible in the criminal courts. That will be a major change.
Clive, we will come back to you as and when you have an update for us from the High Court.
The High Court has blocked a bid to bring a private prosecution against Tony Blair over the Iraq War. The former Iraqi Army Chief of Staff has accused the former Prime Minister of committing a crime of aggression by invading Iraq in 2003 to overthrow President Saddam Hussein. The Lord Chief Justice dismissed the application, saying that there was no prospect of the case succeeding.
Just while we've got you, the High Court has decided that as far as Tony Blair is concerned, he shouldn't face a private prosecution over the Iraq War. Is that the right decision, in your opinion?
Well, what the High Court concluded was that the argument that he was guilty of aggression, there is nothing in our domestic laws that makes that a criminal offence, and therefore it would not be possible for a prosecution to take place. I actually take a wider view. I think, although I strongly disagreed with the Iraq War, I thought Tony Blair was absolutely wrong in promoting and prosecuting that war, I do not think it is a matter for prosecution. I think it was a matter of lousy judgment on his part, and Prime Ministers do occasionally have lousy judgment, and Tony Blair was responsible for that particular sin rather than committing a particular criminal offence.
Good to talk to you as always, Sir Malcolm. Come back soon. Thank you.
Thank you.